So the idea behind the main title was to make kind of a battle transmission that's sent out throughout the universe, and we're able to pick it up on our TVs. And this first shot coming up with Yoda on a kibbuck is the first thing, when people started talking to me about Star Wars, this was the very first thing that I imagined was Yoda riding an animal in the desert with a lightsaber. And it was really one of the biggest difficulties was to create these huge, vast armies. But I think it came out pretty successful. And all the ships are CG. We wanted to have all the flying done in computer to really handle complicated moves, but everything else was done traditionally.
In league with the wicked Count Dooku. More and more planets slip.
These next few scenes are some of my favorite, just showing random battle throughout. And this is always the funnest thing to do, was to do Jedi fights and just to kind of board out, storyboard fighting so we can do our own choreography. And I studied a lot of the movies to really try to figure out how to do it all. Because there's specifics how they do it versus normal samurai action. And flying Jedi are always really cool, so we added that. And we introduced Anakin's robot, his robot hand from the end of Attack of the Clones. We had a choice to hide it in the glove, but we thought keeping it gold and really cool out there would be more visually fun to see.
We must act quickly.
I agree. But who to send? Master Windu still fights on Dantooine.
Lead the assault. Master Obi-Wan can.
And one of the biggest worries that I had was the voice casting and for the episodes. But ended up being very simple because all the actors were so talented, they captured the essence of the characters really well. And we're able even to cartoon up the voices a little bit more, just so it feels a little bit more melodramatic, a little bit more exaggerated. So it ended up being a really fun part of making episodes rather than a big difficulty. And it was a real big challenge drawing, again, all these clone troopers. But we were able to do some tricks where we kind of drew one and then multiplied them in the computer to get it out. And this line was added later on. We thought it'd be cool to kind of reflect back on Obi-Wan thinking about his mentor, which is Qui-Gon. And these are the clone fighters, which we haven't seen before. So I think they did pretty cool. A lot of the CG work was done here, of course, as you could see. But it's rendered normally, so it doesn't have any over-rendering, so it fits in with all the other characters. And this is the introduction of Anakin's fighter, which is like a Jedi starfighter, but he put on some of the pod racer style elements to it, so it feels personalized, so it feels like it's his own. In future episodes, we have a lot of cool, crazy fighting with him and the relationship of the married couple in secret. So in the beginning of Chapter 2, we really wanted to establish the ARC Trooper, which is the Advanced Recon Commandos. And so we wanted to kind of mysteriously introduce them until the last shot after Obi-Wan leaves. And it was pretty cool because I think we always liked stormtroopers as we were kids. And so to create clone troopers and to even make them cooler was really, really an appealing idea. And so the colors are the different different commands, like Sergeant and Captain. And so the red ARC Trooper is the leader. So this little exchange between Obi-Wan and Anakin took us a long time to nail down the dialogue because we really wanted to make it simplistic and to say a lot without saying much. So I think we worked for a couple hours on this dialogue to make it just real simplistic, but to say everything that we need to say. And we only have 3 minutes. You kind of don't have a lot of fat to talk. So almost every sentence was really important. And this is the beginning of setting up all our dog battle episodes where we have the Star Cruisers meeting up with the IG space stations, which carry all the Geonosian fighters. And this is the beginning of setting up all our dog battle episodes where we have the Star Cruisers meeting up with the IG space stations, which carry all the Geonosian fighters. And this is the beginning of setting up all our dog battle episodes where we have the Star Cruisers meeting up with the IG space stations, which carry all the Geonosian fighters. That was one of the limitations. I think we initially wanted to design new bad guy ships that worked with the banking clan, but I think Lucas wanted us to use the Geonosians, which is cool. They're really cool ships, but I think we were really excited to create our own designs. But it ended up being really cool.
ARC troopers deploy.
Yes, sir.
And some of the sound effects are my favorite here because it's really all the sound effects for these gunships are really great from Episode 2, from the Attack of the Clones, and really wanted to utilize them a lot.
Evasive action!
Again, animating and storyboarding for army fights in war is some of the most difficult because you have to, for television, you have to really plan it because we don't have the resources to kind of hand do every little thing. So there's a lot of Xeroxing and a lot of kind of compositing tricks that we've done to make it feel like there's hundreds of guys. And speaking of sound effects, this is one of my, I think, most successful scenes and feels really like Star Wars. This scene right here where the ship is flying by, where we hear the sound effects of the ship bouncing off the city. And the design of the Moonless City, because it is a banking clan, and it's all about money, so we really influenced a lot on banks, and so we made everything kind of Greek style. So for Chapter 3, I was really excited about this episode because this was the chance to do 3 minutes of pure Clone Troopers stuff, action. So we really wanted to do it commando style, where it was very reminiscent of real military strategy, where you have up position trapped with a down position being trapped, and how do they fight out. So we did a lot of research with all the hand signals and made sure that they were accurate. So you'll see a lot of the guys using hand signals and not so much dialogue. It makes it feel a lot more military. And also one of the kind of discussions we had early on is we initially thought they would be all clone troopers. But Lucas wanted to show a little bit more ranking, so they had some normal clone troopers along with a few special ARC troopers. If you listen real carefully, there's some pretty cool laser effects because the effects person put a lot of extra detail, so there's a lot of really juicy laser effects. It's not all the same one. And always a little creature being hit is always very Star Warsy. You know, there's always very delicate places where you can put humor that was all, you know, usually in all the movies that we definitely wanted to pay attention to and delicately place. I think initially we had, for that shot, he put a bomb on the tank, but we thought it would be a really cool idea that he actually jumps, pops a hole in it, jumps in, and breaks it apart. So that scene was a little bit differently in the original story.
General Kenobi, target sighted. Very good, Sergeant. Proceed with the next phase.
All the scopes and stuff really make it feel very Star Wars-y also, because from all the scopes that we've seen in Episode 1 and in the Episode 4 rather than New Hope. This is one of my favorite shots, just kind of blasting Clone Trooper going crazy. We really had a lot of fun doing this because it really was, Stormtroopers, again, are such a just big part of our childhood growing up with Star Wars that animating Clone Troopers doing cool action together is really great. And in this beginning, it was all added sequence, because initially we just had Star Cruisers coming in over all this dialogue. But then we decided that we need all these scenes to kind of really visually tell the story as well as follow Yoda's dialogue. So we kind of added these shots in the last minute. And this was, I think, once we saw the storyboard, it was really fun to see Star Cruisers land in water, because they are kind of reminiscent of battleships.
In these matters, trust your insight, we do. May the Force be with you.
And there's really a lot of fun doing this episode because there wasn't much established to it, so we really just went off and we created these underwater clone troopers. And really just had fun with, what if there was a Jedi fight underwater. So there's the Quarren. And a lot of the designs that we did were all kind of very underwater fish animal based. So that kind of like looks like a squid manta ray type creature. And we contrasted to using all the droids, and so they're all riding mechanical things. But as you'll see coming up with the Mon Calamari, we treat them more organic. So it's kind of following that same idea as technology versus normal organic, kind of like in Phantom Menace with Jar Jar and versus the droids in that battle. And Kit Fisto was really, again, just such a pleasure. And actually, we had a really funny discussion with Lucas in the beginning where they kind of wanted him to wear pants, but we kind of thought it would be kind of silly to have a Jedi swimming underwater with pants. So luckily, they agreed with us, and we were able to have him just wear these kind of swim trunks. And this whole sequence is also added at the end because we did all this stuff and it actually ended up being short. It was like only 2.5 minutes. So I ended up storyboarding this part myself where he creates this really cool Jedi Force bubble that breaks down the giant lobster robot. So even most of them ended up being long. We had to cut things out. For some reason, this one, I think because there's just so little dialogue except for the beginning, that we ended up having to add a little sequence. And then, of course, we'll see the patented Kit Fisto smile as he was kind of grinning from Attack of the Clones. And there it is. And there's some great sound effects as we go away that are kind of TIE Fighter X-Wing-ish right here. That always kind of bring you back to that Star Wars mode again. That was one of the challenges, is we really wanted to make it feel like Star Wars, and as I was examining all the movies, the sound effects is such a big part of that. So whenever we kind of hear familiar sound effects, it really brings us back to the world, the universe. So the explosion that happens here is actually the same explosion that happened from Chapter 3. So we're kind of jumping the timeline a little bit and jumping around our story. And these guys are really fun to draw because they're so weird looking. It's like the aliens were easier kind of to design than the humans because they're a little bit more cartoony, so they had a more of a natural fit into our style of drawing. And there's Dirge. Dirge went through a lot of revisions as we were designing him, because we had kind of a rough sketch from Lucas, and so we tried to really work him in, and we really pushed the proportions. Like, I think the original sketch had a very short neck, but he ended up having a very more elongated neck. He just felt a little bit more cooler that way as a drawing. And of course, speeder bikes. So we did a lot of research from Return of the Jedi to see how, speeder bikes work. And we kind of changed them up a little bit. Like, they're probably a little bit slower than the ones in Return of the Jedi. But we wanted to give it a little bit more of, a motorcycle feel, but still have the speed as how fast the speeders go. And one of the effects that we put on it, we put little blur frames on all the speeder action, so you really feel the speed. So they're on there for maybe like 1 or 2 frames sometimes. And I think the laser effect from the gun is a TIE fighter laser. This episode, for some reason, always goes by really fast, because I think once you're establishing a lot of new ideas, you're only spending 5 or 6 scenes on each idea, where perhaps in Chapter 3, where we only had 3 ideas for the whole episode, it feels a little bit longer. So it's really fun to play with the illusion of time, depending how many fast scenes versus how many slow scenes can really make a difference. So sometimes 3 minutes can feel like a minute, or 3 minutes can feel like 5 minutes. So here we had a lot of fun taking a lot of the characters from the Star Wars universe and putting them into like a gladiator setting. We ended up using a lot of characters that existed in little behind the scenes from the different movies, and we really researched a lot of the different books to try to see all these obscure creatures that we really liked. And then we also made up some of our own too. And of course, like for this henchman guy, we first recorded normal dialogue for him, English dialogue, but then I remember that always seeing subtitles with alien speak with this kind of feels more kind of cool and feels like it's a real language, feels more authentic. So we ended up redubbing him and putting subtitles. And Count Dooku, he was kind of one of the voices that I was most happy with, because it's really hard to... Christopher Lee's got such a great presence, but I thought the voice actor did a good job. And that green creature you just saw, of course, was from one of the guards from Jabba the Hutt from Return of the Jedi. And this is the introduction of Asajj Ventress. And Asajj was actually created for Phantom Menace as to be the original Darth Maul. But then through the shifts of development or however it happened, Darth Maul got the role. But we all really liked her, and we kind of streamlined her design a lot from the way she was in the drawings that Lucas gave us. So we made her a lot more skinny and really more skeletal-like. And so she's got Force abilities. And it was kind of really fun having a real kind of quiet, powerful character to be a feminine, also to be a woman. And this guy was really fun. In the original boards, he was... It was just really funny the way he turned out to have to swing this giant rock on a chain. That was really one of my favorite parts. And we used that blur a lot for force powers. And future episodes coming up, we really start taking advantage more to see how fast the Jedi or people who can use the powers of force are. This was all very inspired by gladiator movies and even kind of samurai showdowns. And the blurring was done pretty simply. We just did it as we composited the animation. I asked some of our compositors to kind of blur out a few of the frames to give it like a motion blur effect like you would see in live action.
For I am Sith.
A bold claim, but you...
Everybody on the crew was really looking forward to this one because it was more simplistic and kind of just a duel, a lightsaber duel. So we could really focus all our energies on just choreography. And so her voice, we kind of went through a lot of different variations on it, but we kind of settled on this kind of Eartha Kiddish type of style voice, almost kind of cat-like, real whispery and gritty.
And I sense much fear in you.
You are a foolish old man who knows nothing of the dark side.
Indeed.
And this environment was also, I think, we were really successful with. It's all one of my favorites, and made it this. We wanted the fight to happen in an apartment or like a penthouse. So we made this giant cavernous penthouse with some metal modern art elements to it, and I thought it was really it has a great real feel to it. And so of course here we're getting into our fighting. And I think I had to even cut 2 or 3 scenes out because we did. I ended up doing 15 to 20 extra poses for a couple of the fights, but the episodes ran a little long. Because it's so fun just to have, And it's kind of subtle to notice there, but I tried really hard to focus on the different fighting styles. So Asajj was kind of crazy, and she's swinging all over the place. And Dooku's just kind of slowly walking back, parrying with just one hand, completely in control. Because, of course, she's no match for Dooku, because he's one of the most powerful.
Not be so easy to defeat a Sith.
And Darth Sidious was one of the most funnest characters to cast for, because his voice, especially when he is Darth Sidious, is so creepy and so scratchy that it was really fun, and we really pushed the actor to make it even a little bit more extreme than in the movies, because it seemed to fit well in cartoons, where maybe it might be a little silly in live action. It's just a subtle change. So in the recording booth, we'd always kind of do imitations of the way we kind of think of the characters stereotypically.
You will find him for us and eliminate him.
Jedi. Their order is a fading light in the dark.
There was a few scenes cut out also because the episode was kind of long, where he gave her these coordinates and this spinning ball. It was pretty cool.
A gift.
And there's Asajj's ship that leaves that we just kind of introduced it a little bit here, because later in episodes 10, when we really see it, it really was a great design. It was an original design by Paul Rudish. One of the first drawings that was drawn when we started developing the Clone Wars pitch to Lucas was Paul Rudish, who's one of the art directors, drew Obi-Wan Kenobi on a speeder with a lance. So Jedi's lancing and jousting was an idea that we all really loved, so we knew we would do it. So this is the episode where we really kind of get into it a lot more. And all the sound was, probably one of my favorite things to have, the speeder sound, and I think we kind of tweaked it a little bit, especially for the dirge bikes. And one of the little stories was that originally for the Obi-Wan Kenobi design, we had him in the kind of more of an Imperial trooper, one of the the Imperial guards, the red guys from episode 2, I think. And because so he would stand out, but I think Lucas for some reason didn't want to use a lot of those Imperial Guard helmets, so we ended up just giving Obi-Wan Kenobi a clone trooper helmet. And all those scenes that came before this, all the kind of fighting stuff, was actually in addition. When we first got the work print back, we thought that there wasn't enough fighting, so we were able to trim other scenes and to add 5 or 6 scenes of the robot falling and breaking apart, and that was added, and some of the drive-bys was added also. One of the storyboard artists, Brian Andrews, if you ever see the episode any episode of this Clone Wars, if there's a Jedi flying in the air and spinning, you always know it's him because for some reason he always likes to put in Jedi flying in the air and kind of spinning martial arts style. And Obi-Wan takes a pretty good wallop here. When we first saw it, we thought it was really funny just to kind of see somebody get beat up so bad. And it's hard to see in some of these scenes, but we actually, for the smoke in the backgrounds, is painted like a painting. It has no animation. But over it, we added a very soft ripple effect, almost like a water ripple, to give it movement. And it's kind of hard to see because all the scenes are so quick. But if you watch it 100 times, you'll start to notice that the background does move a little bit on some of the longer scenes. Yeah, you can see it right there. And the hologram effect, we used it a lot. It was actually pretty simple to do. It's just a transparent image of the drawing with some scan lines that are kind of added in compositing that go over it. And of course, Dirge is alive as well. But one of the story's kind of long, so I'll kind of talk over some of this stuff, is that we always wanted to do Dirge where we really kind of explode from the normal, kind of bounty hunter idea and what's been done with the bounty hunters. So we decided to give him this kind of really weird alien inside. And we had some discussions about maybe that's not part of the Star Wars universe. But we felt like, in all the movies, there was always something new introduced. Like in Episode 2, there was a changeling introduced, as kind of a shapeshifter. So we thought if we made an introduction, it would still feel like it's part of the universe. So, and they kind of agreed with us after that point. So we were able to give Dirge these morphe powers, like he's this unstable alien once he's all destroyed. And that became more fun because, we did enjoy doing Dirge, but not as much as we enjoyed during the, changeling or metamorphosized Dirge. And I like that the clone troopers are always doing overkill. We had more development of this episode too because we had a lot more dialogue between Obi-Wan and the ARC commander because it always became like a comedy act, like Abbott and Costello between Obi-Wan Kenobi and the ARC commander. But we had to cut it out for time. So this is all really fun to do, and he was so complicated to draw, but so much fun because after doing so many droids and so many tanks and vehicles and stuff, it was fun just to do this organic muscle mass. And this is one of the episodes where we really wished we had more time because once we got into this type of stuff, we had so much fun and we really wanted to kind of push it even more, and have more different things and have him morph into different creatures almost and fight more of the ARC troopers, but we just knew we had no time. And originally he was almost always supposed to be moving like that, but it was just too complicated to do. And so we ended up kind of settling on a little bit of a simpler version. And another one of the kind of discussions we had was, I think in the original biography of Dirge, he's supposed to regenerate himself over a long time span, but we kind of made his regeneration a lot quicker. So we didn't think it was a big deal, and it was it fit into our story a lot more comfortable. And this was our chance to do space fighting. And we were really looking forward to this because I think we were all itching to do some great dogfight battles. So of course we kind of, made homage to the, Star Wars with the slow Star Cruiser coming in. And this next scene coming up was really great, and this had one of the longest backgrounds we've ever done, where we have this elevator in our office, and the drawing stretched from the elevator around a corner, around another 2 corners, and around my office, because it was just so huge. Because we were going to originally do it in CG, but it was just too hard, so all of this was done traditional, except for all the ships, because in this episode all the ships were done in computer. because we thought it would be, well, easier, number one, and we'd have more control and they would look better because they would keep their form stronger than if somebody would hand draw all the different perspectives. But in that shot was also twice as long, where they went through even more tunnels and went around more loops, but we just ran out of time. And we did a lot of kind of upshots on the, like this, on the clone troopers, because it really made them feel like those upshots on the TIE fighters from Star Wars. So yeah, it was, when I first started looking at some of the footage, it almost seemed a little silly with how many ships. Because I think if you saw it in live action, it'd be like, whoa, that's just ridiculous. But for some reason, because it's a cartoon, you accept it a little bit more, the ridiculousness of it. I thought these lasers here turned out really good. It was a really hard thing to do, to get Star Wars lasers, to get the timing right on that, because it's a very particular type of laser. So I think in some of the episodes we got it right, in some of the episodes they look a little weird, because it was really hard to follow.
But Commander, there's nothing out there. No targets.
Do it now, Trooper!
We spent a lot of time kind of designing these paths for the missiles, because we really wanted them to feel like they're kind of all over the place and following, and I think we did a really good job, or I was happy with the way it turned out. This is one of my favorite shots, because it's real tricky to feel like he's coming in and swooping under, and again, there's no special camera work on it. It's just the way we drew the drawing to have it kind of change perspectives in the middle of the camera move, and it gave this really interesting perspective on it. And one of the problems we were reaching to the end of this episode is, should we show Asajj Ventress or we shouldn't? And because you never really saw her ship, and when we reveal it here, it's kind of almost the first time you saw it from Chapter 7. But I thought it'd be really interesting and kind of trust the audience to kind of maybe figure it out, but if it's mysterious, it's still kind of interesting. So one of the first things we did was kind of decided that I'm not going to have music through most of the episode and really let the action play out. And that, I was really happy, especially once after I heard it with sound effects. It made it really strong, and it even became more intense because there is no music. It almost feels more real. And so this, of course, most of the stuff is CG for all the ships, and just some of the characters are still 2D. And it was pretty simple, kind of like the way they animated it was pretty good. They followed pretty much the boards, and I would do these layouts where I'd kind of give them guides how I thought things would play out. But the animators were really good, and I think we're all kind of fans of Star Wars, so to do space battle, I think we've all kind of been waiting and anticipating to do it. So this was the episode where we could really play it out and do a lot of really cool moves without having to deal with a lot of huge armies and all that kind of stuff like we did in Chapter 10. This one's just a lot of cool flybys and kind of chasing. And I think one of the things that George Lucas likes when he kind of did Star Wars was, he kind of looked to 1940s and 30s dogfights. And we kind of referenced it a little bit, but we just kind of wanted to have fun with it. And that's one of my favorite sounds that were made for this episode, with just that little kind of plain sounding. There's a lot of really juicy sound. I hope people watch it really loud because there's a lot of depth to the sound design. Because when we watch stuff here, like after we deliver it, we have a little screening room and we play it really loud, and it feels more like the movie instead of just watching a little TV show when the sound is kind of amped up.
You're supposed to be in space leading our forces.
Brian Andrews storyboarded this sequence, and he's done most of our really good action shows, and he's just kind of like a student of action. So I think this is really fun for him, and I think we always, for all these episodes, we always ended up having like twice as much material. And this was showing Asajj Ventress here was a big argument between us because we kind of wanted to keep it mysterious, but we felt it's been a really long time since we kind of lost track of the story. So I think if we revealed it here, it would still be strong. I'm still kind of going back and forth on it, because I think inside I kind of wanted to wait till Chapter 17 to really reveal her. But it just may be just the format of the way things are done. It might be just too long. And it's always fun to do Anakin and Obi-Wan arguing. I think that's one of the strongest character relationships in the story. And Paul Rudish designed the fan ship, and I think it's just, I hope they make a toy of it, because it's, I think, a really good addition to the Star Wars universe.
You have the coordinates?
Yes, General.
Take a squad and follow him. I've got a bad feeling about this.
So for Chapter 12 and 13, we knew we wanted to do another kind of side story like we did with Kit Fisto. So we definitely wanted to use Mace, because he's really, he's one of the strongest Jedis next to Yoda. So we came up with a story with this giant seismic tank that he would fight. And so this is Episode 12, of course, that's going to set up that story. And 13 is really where we paid off. So we used the kid as kind of kind of like an audience point of view to maybe draw you in more into the war that's happening. Kind of a little more personal, so you have this extra character viewing all this action. And I was really kind of nervous about this episode, because especially even maybe more Episode 13, but the whole idea of the seismic tank, because it was kind of more cartoony, and it was a little, if you kind of just talk about it, that sounds a little silly, with a giant seismic tank that's going to smash a big piston into the ground and destroy everything in its sight. But we never had any problems with it. I think, especially once we did the storyboards, they were just so great and so funny, and there was no issues about it. We did have a lot of problems with the animation in this beginning section with Mace Windu, so I ended up doing a lot of rough animation with his lightsaber. It just never turned out as strong, and so I ended up redoing most of it. Mace was a tough character to draw, because we really didn't get a chance to draw him much. So this was the whole problem with doing the Clone Wars, is that it was just right away we would design the character, and then we'd have to draw him out for the next month. And a lot of times when, let's say if I was doing Dexter or Samurai Jack, I would spend a lot of time, once I designed him, I would spend a lot of time practicing. And we just never got a chance to really practice. So Mace and Anakin were, I think, some of the toughest to draw, for whatever reason. I don't know why. And here we're kind of building contrast. You could kind of tell the sound is dropping down. But in the TV dynamic range isn't big enough to handle really dynamic movements. So whenever I'm doing something that's going to be really loud, right before it, I make it almost completely quiet. So then you could really get startled. And so your contrast is a lot bigger. There was these comics done in, I think sometimes in the maybe mid-'80s or early '90s, where they had these kind of floating tea ships. They were like these big-sized issued comic books. I think they were even done in Britain. And I saw them a little while ago, and they had a thing kind of similar to a seismic tank, but they were giant battleships. So it was kind of inspired a little bit by that. But this is one of the first ideas that I had for the series, is this giant tank that would make giant earthquakes. And Chapter 13 is my personal favorite, because we really got to just explore Jedi's powers without a lightsaber, which we really haven't seen that much. And this is also one of the episodes that I was very, very nervous about getting approval from Lucas about, because it was a little bit more far-fetched than we used. We really made Mace almost have superpowers to a degree. I mean, which Jedi powers kind of are. And but they loved it, and they never really had a concern about it. And especially after I saw the footage come back and just how cool and powerful Mace turned out to be, I knew that they would love it. And so the artist who did the storyboard is this guy named Brian Andrews. I've worked with on Jack for a while, and we also knew each other from school also. And he used to be like the 6th ranked wushu champion of the United States. So we talked about what kind of action, what kind of fighting do we want Mace to do, and we definitely, because the Jedis are definitely kind of martial arts feeling, so we definitely wanted to bring a few martial arts in. So there's a lot of choreography that's very similar to wushu, but we kind of changed it here and there, and we had so much more too. We had like another 3 sequences of Mace fighting, but it was just too long. Again, I think the only frustration in all these things is just the time frame that we have. We had so many ideas, and we could only fit a few. Because it almost like, whenever I watch it, I was like, oh, I want to see Mace fight more. And then you can't, because we always have to kind of, just never enough time. And one of the big problems with this episode initially was, how do we finish it? And the original ending we had is Mace lands, and then he goes, this party's over, kind of like from the Attack of the Clones from the movie. But it just felt, especially in animation, just felt a little bit more cheesy if he would say that. So we talked about what to do, and then we're kind of sitting around, joking around. And then we knew we wanted to tie back the kid back into the story, the kid from the beginning of episode 12. And so we had this idea about the kid offering him water, and it became kind of like not a tribute to, but like a homage to that Mean Joe Green commercial from the 70s where Mean Joe Green is walking away into the hallway of the locker room, and the kid offers him a Coke. And I really wanted to build the idea of a Jedi being kind of heroes. And so this was kind of a cool interaction between the fan and the hero. So in Chapter 14, we talked about war and what to do in war. And one of the things we were talking about is always kind of your supplies get cut. So we had this idea, what are the Jedi supplies? And we said, oh, lightsabers. So then we thought, oh, it'd be great to go to Ilum, where they make the crystals are that power the lightsabers. So that was a really strong idea. And then we wanted to do new Jedis, of course. So we looked through all the books and kind of looked at the movie and thought, oh, and then we realized these two, Bira Sophie and Illuminara, and it was like, oh yeah, they're really cool, and they always felt kind of ethnic to me, so I wanted to bring in, like the music is definitely stranger, and their accents have some kind of ethnicity to it. So I wanted to do kind of this African Asian thing that felt comfortable with. And it was great to explore the Master and Padawan relationship besides some of the other ones that we've seen. And we tried to work in their relationship where Barris would always kind of follow Illuminara's lead. And these droids we designed originally ourselves. So they're kind of like a mix between IG-88s and some of the other ones. It's always fun to design droids because you could always mix and match parts and they still feel real Star Wars-y. So you could see they're fighting and doing all their moves together in unison. So that was something that we really focused on. So each Jedi has their unique own style of fighting. We didn't get a lot of... Lucas always liked these episodes. There's not a lot of issues that we had with these. We first were kind of nervous that we wanted to use the Jedi Caverns, because we've never really seen that on film, how a saber gets put together and stuff. But the way we treated it seemed to work okay for them. I had some other ideas for the caverns that we would really to put out. I wanted to make it more like a Gothic church type of feel to it, so there would be almost like stained glass windows. But again, because of the time frame, we really didn't get into we couldn't get into the environment too much. You can kind of see in the back in some of the backgrounds, there it looks like kind of stained glass. But then they would be covered by the jewels, and there would be reflective light and all this kind of crazy cool stuff. But just didn't get an opportunity to do that.
To Ilum, we must go.
Absolutely not.
So in Chapter 15, we definitely wanted to bring in the droids and Padme and Yoda. So we all kind of decided to put them together because we didn't have enough stories to have everybody have their own episode. So we kind of grouped them in between 14, 15, and 16. And it was fun to have somebody argue with Yoda because, of course, you can't argue with him. It was hard also to pick out music that kind of covers this because it's supposed to be funny, but it's kind of not. So I found this one cue that John Williams did, and we kind of embellished on it. But I thought it was pretty successful in its feel. And Padme is another character who was really difficult to draw. Like even there, I didn't think she looked as great because she's so subtle in her appearance, and she's supposed to be beautiful and kind of young and innocent, and it's hard to draw. And of course, that's the real voice of C-3PO, Anthony Daniels, and he was just amazing to work with. We only did a phone patch recording, so he wasn't even here. He was in London, and we were in Los Angeles when we recorded him. But he was just as nice as you can be, and he corrected some of our dialogue and some of our writing, and he brought some ad-lib to it, so it was great. Especially in Chapter 16, I'll talk about it some more. And we wanted to push the relationship between Padme and Yoda, how they kind of, like each other. And Yoda's the most powerful Jedi in the universe, and she's so concerned for him. So he thinks it's so sweet. We always got to laugh at that when we first watched it. And we had a lot of questions about his design as we were doing him because we always liked the kind of how cute he was from Empire Strikes Back. So I think we kind of made him real kind of short and squatty and even cuter. So like after I saw this, I was like, oh, I want a little Yoda doll. Because he does feel like a kind of a puppet and he's all adorable. And then so that made the action even better because you have this cute character who's all powerful, of course, and he's who really kicks some butt. And also one of the kind of concerns from Lucas from this episode. Originally, we just ended the episode of him just destroying all the droids, but they felt like they wanted to see a little bit more of him rescuing the other Jedi. So we added this little bit right here where he walks in and starts lifting the rocks. It wasn't a big deal. I kind of agreed with him. I think we just wanted more fight, and they wanted kind of to wrap up the story a little stronger, which is definitely cool. So Chapter 16, we had a lot of... it was kind of an easy episode to do, but it was actually one of the most difficult because we had a few issues that we ran into. Number one, we had a problem with drawing Padme, where we wanted her to be, beautiful, but also retain a great kind of, almost like a warrior fighting spirit. So we really messed around with her face a lot to make her look attractive and still tough. And it was very difficult. It might look okay, but there's a lot of hours put into all those drawings. And I don't know if anybody's familiar with the 70s holiday special where Nelvana did the animation, but the C-3PO design is very similar to kind of what they did. It was kind of a little bit of an homage because they had these kind of black dots on C-3PO, and we kind of followed suit, so he has more of an expression. So you can see his pupils are kind of moving around, but it's very subtle. And we colored him all different colors in the armor, so he looks a little bit more beat up slightly. And of course, Anthony Daniels did the voice, which was just a great experience. And R2, just like the movies, he's got so much personality just from those bleeps. And we kind of didn't try to overanalyze. We kind of just went with our instincts. And I think he just comes off so great. I worked a lot on this little run of C-3POs. It's real hard to do. It's always the episodes with the more subtle actions and subtle humors are always the toughest. And this must be 5 drawings per expression of trying out to make it match.
Arthur says there are 2 more still out there.
2 more?
And what I really liked about this episode is the atmosphere. It's kind of, the beginning, like the beginning of Empire, where it's just windy, blizzard with no music. It makes it kind of real strong. So this episode, I think, has like 2 cues of music through the whole thing. And the original line of dialogue was for 3PO, "I must be out of my mind." And Anthony Daniel goes, "Well, he doesn't really have a mind. He's got circuits." So we said, "Oh, of course, you're right." And Anthony Daniels was doing like 3 or 4 like different versions for each line. I think this joke actually we changed up a few times to just kind of fit it in. We had a few difficulties here and there. I don't remember what the other jokes were, but
Successful, my mission was. Save the Jedi R. What pain my heart is.
I was kind of happy with the Padme Yoda relationship. I feel like they could have a sitcom, like they're roommates or something.
But by whom I know not.
The last shot of Yoda, I thought we did a pretty good job drawing him. He's got a lot of nice juicy detail on him, but he still kind of looks cute and fuzzy. So chapter 17, we come back to our story, their big story arc. And 17, 18, and 19 is where we decided to spend these 3 episodes on finishing the big duel between Anakin and Asajj. And we decided to make it place on the moon of Yavin 4, which was from the original Star Wars. And there was some research that we did with how to paint the planet and stuff, and Scott Willis, who's the background painter, did this really cool texture on it, as you saw. So we really featured it all over the place, especially once you get to 19, you'll really see it featured. And all these sound effects are very specific to Star Wars. It's all from their library. It's not just like a regular swamp. I think Eric Foreman, who's our sound effects editor, he really put together a lot of original sounds for this, not just using library. I went back and forth a lot on this hut, 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 hut stuff because I really liked it and it was funny and it felt like it gave the clone troopers a little bit more character because they're like this unit. So I decided to keep it, but there was like 3 edits. One of them had it, the other one didn't. It was a big struggle. And so this whole episode pretty much has no music because I really wanted to feature how suspenseful it was and to use the sound effects of the jungle to kind of drive the drama. And of course this is, I think when Brian Anders did the storyboard and when he pitched the story, I think it became one of the funniest because all the troopers were of course just getting beat up, even though it's supposed to be kind of highly dramatic. So we spent a lot of time on the sound effects with them getting crashed because on the first pass it was just like a fa-dunk, like a dunk. And we talked about different things. So then we put it more clatter and almost like a car getting hit because they would have more shaky parts, the clone troopers would. And this helmet, we made it a lot more messed up from the original footage that we had, just to emphasize how much pain they're going through. It was stuff I thought for sure that Lucas wouldn't let us destroy the Anakin's ship, since we just kind of introduced it. But it seemed so dramatic that it would destroy his ship and his droid, because he's got such a personal bond with his droids.
make you pay for what you've done.
It'd be fun to kind of edit this once with just the Anakin story without any of the side parts. I think it would be a pretty cool 20 minutes or something like that. It wouldn't be that long. So she's trying to find her place. And so chapter 18, we knew we wanted to make this the big battle sequence. And actually, in our original breakdown, chapter 16 was chapter 17, and 17, 18, and 19 were supposed to be all really big fights. But we felt like it might have been just kind of too much fighting, and we wanted to build in a little bit more story and almost like a little bit more of suspense leading up into chapter 18. So that's why we made 17 the way it is today. So we added so many poses to this, and there's, I think, no lines of dialogue in this episode at all. So it's just action, action, action. And so we added a lot of extra work into all the action fights and the poses. Because it takes so much screen time to go through these quick poses. Because you might have maybe 40 poses and it's only like 5 seconds of screen time. And especially in TV animation, you don't really do that a lot, because it's very time consuming, and it's almost like it's a lot of extra work basically. But I think it's definitely worth it for the Jedi fights. And kind of jumping through trees is very kind of inspired by Hong Kong cinema, where they always have kind of those powers where they fly around. So I thought it was a great setting for this big fight sequence, because it really sprawls through the whole jungle. We do a lot of the blurring just to add on all the really quick movements, just to add that illusion of extra speed. We really worked on that background a lot, but it never I'm still unhappy with it. It was kind of a difficult one to really establish depth. And we were really inspired, kind of Frank Frazetta was one of our inspirations for some of the jungle treatments here. And so we did a lot of kind of more, kind of almost rainy, mossy type jungle atmosphere. And now these are the ruins that were from, I think one of the Star Wars books had drawings of these giant, kind of almost Aztec-y ruins from Yavin. And so we were kind of inspired by them and put them in here. And we thought about what would be a great capper to this kind of standoff. And so we wanted to do something really cool, and I wanted to finish on a low note with no music. And then we came up with this idea about the rain hitting the lightsabers. And I was kind of worried about it because I didn't know if it was legitimate in the real physical world. But I think it turned out real successful, and I was real happy with it, especially in the beginning of Chapter 19. For Chapter 19, we wanted to get darker. Kind of Chapter 17 was a little bit sillier with all the guys being, destroyed. And 18 was kind of straight action, but Chapter 19 we wanted to really bring in the mood. And really we wanted to explore Anakin kind of getting darker and madder. So again, I was definitely concerned if we would be able to push the character a little bit and to explore that dark side that we've slowly got to see in Attack of the Clones. But fortunately enough, they really didn't have a problem with anything, because we really made things really intense, especially toward the end. And one of my favorite sequences is here when he walks into the dark cave, because again, it's just so great to have stuff with a lot of mood, and you kind of slow it down, especially in these 3-minute episodes where we had to really rush through a lot of stuff. But here we decided, you know what, we're just going to really slow it down and let it play up. And we did a lot of more, as the drama progressed, we did a lot more stylized color changes. So here, Anakin is represented all blue, like his lightsaber is blue. And then Asajj is all in reds. So it became like this kind of stylized blue versus red in the black background. And so kind of the more stylized it get, the more dramatic it got also. But then as things escalate at the end, they're both red colors against the red, glaring red moon planet. All the crackling sounds of the rocks breaking is it's got such a great library at Lucasfilm. We brought in a lot of percussion because I definitely learned in Samurai Jack that a lot of percussion for action fights really fit well, kind of like taiko drum type of feel to it. So here, like I was saying, everybody's in kind of dark reds over this red planet. And now we bring in Anakin's theme, which is kind of his destruction, kind of the duel of the fates, where we, in other films, it kind of triggered his dark side. So we brought it up. And then him completely letting loose on Asajj. And I was really nervous about showing images of Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon Jinn and Yoda here. But nobody had a problem with it, and it just became like everybody's aware of Anakin's darker side slowly creeping out. So Chapter 20 began as our easiest episode that we had planned, because it was initially going to be 2 minutes of wrap-up, kind of with Anakin landing and him kind of talking about what happened with Obi-Wan. And then we reveal, as everybody's starting to take off from the planet, we reveal that Dirge is now formed back together and he's still around. And then we're going to have 1 minute of credits just to kind of wrap up all the episodes that we've done. But then it turned out that we wanted to do a Jedi contest. So now we knew we had to open up the beginning. So we don't just show one scene with the new Jedi that everybody picked, but we had a little sequence. So we saw the Jedi in a little bit of action. And then we were informed that they wanted us to introduce one of the new characters from Episode 3. And we were like, wow, well, we definitely need more time. And so we ended up making it over twice as long, just so we have time to so we don't have to rush through everything. We had time to establish everybody. And so, of course, that was Wolf Mon who won the contest. So when they talked about General Grievous, who's the character we're going to introduce, it was so early in the process of them doing Episode 3 that they haven't had a voice recording for him. They haven't had a lot of stuff. And so all the information that we got was basically some the initial maquette, pictures of the initial maquette, a little bit of background information, and 2 illustrations that were done. So we kind of see his colors and stuff. And it was really kind of it was a very big undertaking because, with this stuff, if we invented some things, it's really not a big deal because it's kind of just exists in the Clone Wars animated universe. But now this is going to be following or introducing a character in the 3rd movie, so there's going to be this whole follow-up to it. So we really wanted to do something really cool and interesting that if maybe George saw it, he would be excited about it too, and maybe add it or whatever, just kind of not mess it up. So the first thing we did, we tried really different ways of how to interpret his design, and he was kind of a real complicated character because in CG you can do more complications because once you design the model you can do everything, but in 2D the more complicated the harder it is to animate. But we wanted to not hold back and go out on it. I'll go for a little sidetrack here. The original storyboard for this was all done in mountain ranges. And then one of the mountain ranges that were drawn looked like kind of a Star Cruiser. And then it hit me that, why don't we do this whole sequence in the wreckage of a Star Cruiser because they're so giant. And then once we hit that, then all these layouts just kind of just flowed out because it was I think it was just such a cool idea for a fight to be located. Because a lot of stuff, when you have a fight, the more interesting the environment, it'll kind of affect the more interesting the fight will become. And then we picked out kind of some Jedi. We knew we wanted to do more cool Jedis because we just saw so little of them in Episode 2 that we wanted to play around with them. So we got Ki-Adi-Mundi and Shakti and Tarsier and a couple others. So that was really fun to draw all these new Jedi. And now back to Grievous. So we worked a lot on his designs, how to kind of simplify it, but still have it feel like it's got a lot of motion and kind of details. And again, the voice might be completely different in the movie. I don't know, because we had very limited information, and I think George kind of just said he's going to be a little bit more high-pitched, but kind of grovelly. So, and they were so busy with them, with the third movie doing other things that they really couldn't design the voice. It was just a bad time in production. So we kind of took a stab at it, and we'll see what happens. Which I knew I just wanted to stay away from the Darth Vader style of voice.
That noise.
And here we spent a lot of time kind of designing how his footsteps would sound, so it sounds kind of real creepy and dangerous, but you just don't see anything. It's almost very kind of Hitchcockian, to where the less you show, the more you see kind of philosophy, or less is more.
Calm yourself.
And so when we started to design the action, we definitely wanted to, kind of do something that we haven't done in the last 20 episodes. And in the last 20 episodes, we've done a lot of kind of one-on-one Jedi fighting. So we decided when we were going to do this, it's going to be all the Jedi fighting him all the time. And that was a very big undertaking. And so we did a lot of kind of sketches and playing around with him. And he's got, they were saying that he's very agile and he's very fast. So we had to design the fighting so it's not just this giant lumbering robot. He's completely quick and agile and fast. Also musically, what we were going to do, because we've used everything inspired from John Williams' music. But for this, we wanted a new thing, and one of my favorite things is the Prokofiev score to Alexander Nevsky. And so there's this kind of attack on the lake sequence, and it's very kind of like intense, and I wanted to have this kind of oncoming doom feature feeling to it. So the music was kind of inspired from that. And this scene I animated myself because it's so complicated with him jumping on his feet. And that's like 2 weeks of work in a blink of an eye. So again, we have him jump around all over the place. Really went all out with this episode too, because there's a lot of highlights on everybody, and there's a lot more lighting. So it's really, this is kind of the utmost you can do in television, without kind of killing yourselves. I feel like my wife hasn't seen me for 3 months while I'm looking at this.
Hurry!
And Eric Foreman, the sound effects designer, really spent a lot of times creating all this new library for him, where he kind of treated a lot of these coils and springs, and just to really give it its own unique sound. So I wish we knew about Grievous earlier, because we would have loved to almost, even though I like the way Dirge turned out, it would have been great to really establish a strong backstory for him throughout the 20 episodes, and then, do the big capper at the very end with him and all these Jedi. So I feel like it would have been a lot stronger, but I think this is, I think we did pretty good from what the kind of time and availability we had. We just wanted more and more information, and kind of realized as the days went on we weren't going to get it, so we kind of we did what we could.